Well, hello, everyone. My name is McKenzie Kane with the National Sports Media Association here at the 64th Awards Ceremony and National Convention. And I have the privilege of being joined by legendary sports broadcaster Joe Buck. Mr. Buck, thank you for speaking with me today.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, this setup is fantastic, better than I could have done, so you're already ahead of the game.
Appreciate that. And
Yes.
there was a lot of buildup coming up to this weekend, and now that you are officially here, what are your emotions right now?
It's kind of surreal. I don't know how old you are. I would never ask your age, but I still think of myself being your age. And I think that comes from having a dad in this business and, kind of following in his footsteps and always feeling like you're the young kid trying to prove yourself. And now to be 55, which doesn't feel that old yet, but going into a Hall of Fame, it's like, okay, it's time to start looking back a little bit and not always looking forward. And you're not anymore the young person in the room. You're the old seasoned veteran. So kind of a range of emotions, but for somebody who's been to this event before, it means a lot. And I know my family's excited for me, and I am too.
Now, in just a few hours, you will be getting inducted into the NSMA Hall of Fame, and it's a Hall of Fame that your father was inducted into about 33 years ago. So how does it feel?
It's cool, it's good. I got to do that with the NFL and the Pete Rozelle Award, and I seem to be just walking in his footsteps everywhere I go. So he was Lewis and Clark, and I am everybody else following Lewis and Clark. I mean, he's already blazed the trail. And, that comes with a lot of guilt of getting a head start and, having a master's class every night of my summers as a kid growing up and watching him call Cardinal games and being 2 seats away and putting it all together in my mind and thinking how I would call it if I were sitting in his seat, and then eventually having him as my broadcast partner, or better said, him having me as a broadcast partner. And it feels like yesterday, and now here we are. He's been gone for over 20 years, but his shadow is large, and I love living in it. I've tried to kind of break out of it here and there and do some different things and stuff that he didn't do, but I just couldn't be more proud that he was my dad, and I learned from not just a great broadcaster, but a great person. And I think anybody that met him that would be in this room tonight would tell you the same thing. So I don't know what it's like if you follow somebody into the father or mother's business and that person's not a nice person. I guess you start kind of behind the 8 ball. I was on the other end. I never had to worry about when somebody said, oh, I worked with your dad back in the 80s, or oh, I worked with your dad in the early 90s at CBS. I always knew it was going to be a good story. And it's a great gift that he gave me, and I continue to use it to this day.
Can you bring me to that moment of realization when you knew this was the career you wanted to pursue professionally?
I was probably 4, and I kind of say that jokingly and kind of not. I mean, I remember as a kid when my dad would kind of get the deep voice on, even in his office at home, he was doing a radio interview on the phone. I knew if I wanted to be in that room and watch him do what he was doing, I couldn't be the typical 4, 5, 6-year-old and just make noise and, clank stuff around and talk to him. I had to be quiet. And I was in awe of what he did. And I don't think I ever wanted to be anything else. I just wanted to be him. And, I entertained trying to be a baseball player, which was comical. And then realized that I was destined to kind of follow in my dad's footsteps. So it happened at a young age, and I think every year after that, it just reinforced it more and more and more. And, then I was at Fox by the time I was 24. I got hired there, and the rest is kind of history. Baseball came along, U.S. Open came along, ESPN's now come along. So I've just led this fortunate run.
You've just touched on it. You've called games in all different sports, baseball, football, PGA. How does the strategy differ based off of what it is you're calling?
Well, one thing is the same, and that is you better do all the reading and you better do all the prep. It gives you peace of mind, I think, to do your best, be your most relaxed self, which I think leads to a better broadcaster. But at the same time, you can't rely on it. You can't rely on putting your head down and burying yourself in your notes while a game's going on out here. So you've done the work, you've done all the reading, you've put it down, whether it's via computer or hand or whatever it is. But my dad was always the one saying, if a big breeze comes up and blows that out of the booth, you should still be able to do the game because you're watching something that nobody's ever seen before. And so you're putting your mind and your words and all that work and prep to it. So it's a balance. I think it's all about finding a balance between talking too much, talking too little, using too much research and history versus the here and now. So really, you just apply that to every sport. Baseball, there's no clock. I used to be able to say that. Now there's a pitch clock, but it's still, you can have foul ball after foul ball, and you can just kind of ease into it. Football, there's a play clock, so you're just constantly going. And golf, you would think it's slow because that's how it feels when you're on your couch. But when you're there and you're jumping from hole to hole to hole to hole and you're not there watching it yourself, it goes faster than any of it. So faster than football and baseball. So they're all different, but I think you apply the same principles to any sport you cover.
As a collegiate golfer myself, that's the fastest 4.5, 5 hours that I will ever go through.
Yeah, it's intense. And it took me a while to get used to the rhythm of what it takes to hear in your ear, hey, we're going to Spieth on 4. He's putting for birdie. Okay, makes the putt, doesn't make the putt. Now you recap that in 1 second, and you're going to Dustin Johnson on 7, who's at the tee or whatever. And so it's just 6 straight hours, 5 straight hours of doing these mental gymnastics, and you hope at some point you make a decent point along the way and you don't come off sounding like a moron.
Now, you've had a number of different partners in the booth, some for decades, and I'm curious, what is the strategy for just building chemistry and keeping it for so long?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's like any friendship. Or any marriage or anything. I think you get out of it what you put in it. And I don't think you can just, assume that it's all going to be great. I think you have to work at it. And I think that person, whether it's Tim McCarver and his daughter Kathy is just passed outside the window right now, or Troy Aikman for 23 years, whoever it is, John Smoltz for 6 great years, you need them to know that you've done your homework, that you've got their back, and then vice versa. You know that they've got yours. And so it's going to dinner, it's talking via text, it's making the other person laugh. It's all about making a relationship. And I think you can't just assume that, hey, we're paired together to do the World Series, it's just going to be great. You got to put the time in. And I don't think that changes depending on network or sport or any of it. I think it's probably the most important part of my job.
Now, it's funny you mentioned Aikman. His daughter and I are actually very close friends, and I ended up reaching out to him ahead of this interview, asking if he had any questions that he thought I should throw your way.
Wow.
And of course, he did.
Okay.
Well, first off, he congratulated you on the accomplishment. But, having been in the football booth for so long now, not too long ago, you were joining Chip Carey in the broadcast booth in St. Louis, and Mother Nature was not on your side that afternoon. So he wanted to know what was honestly the disappointment in that.
There was a lot of disappointment. I haven't done baseball now this is the 3rd year. It's a part of my DNA. It's where I grew up, in the baseball broadcast booth with my dad. And to have walked away from it, not knowing in 2021 that World Series game was my last game, I never really had any closure, to use kind of an annoying word, but there was a feeling of like open-endedness. So Chip was nice enough to let me join him in the booth for a game against the Cubs, and then, as you said, it got rained out. So we did all the pregame stuff, we did all the on-camera stuff. We're going to do another game at the end of this month. It's on the books. We'll see if it rains that night, but it was going to be fun. And as we got closer and closer to it, I was like, man, I am a lot more excited about this than I ever thought I would be. And now I've got 6-year-old boys. I want them, they kind of get it. So, and they're playing baseball. So I want them to kind of see dad do a game. There were a lot of things going on there. And it was Kerry and Buck and my dad and his grandpa were longtime broadcast partners. So hopefully it doesn't rain when we give this another shot.
And in those pregame promos, you guys had one of my favorite lines of all time. Chip said, in baseball and life, the whole point is to come home. Joe's back home. I'm here home in St. Louis, and we hope you at home are going to have as much fun as we plan to have.
Yeah.
I really hope that you two will truly seize that.
I hope so. And that's what it is, that baseball is just different than the other sports, especially for Chip now and TV the way it is, but the radio and my dad, and people feel like you're a part of their family. And you're in their homes night after night, day after day. So you have to treat it accordingly and respect that. So there's a lot to that. And I was glad Chip said all that. And, we'll give it another try.
You just said it. You're a part of their family. You're essentially the middleman between the fans and the experiences calling the Cubs game, all of these historic calls that you've made along the way. How does it feel knowing that these fans are going to associate you with those memories?
Yeah, I mean, it is a job, but there's also that side of it. When you do 24 World Series, and one of them was the Red Sox first World Championship in 86 years, and the other one was the Cubs first World Championship in 108 years, and you go on and on and on, and it's humbling, it's exciting. The Yankees return to greatness, and the Core Four, and all that stuff, and so I've had a really blessed career, and baseball, I think I go to sleep at night dreaming of myself as a baseball announcer. I love football. Football's huge. We all know that. And they're getting 270,000 people into a venue for a draft. You know that something special is going on. I love it. But I just associate baseball with Busch Stadium, with my dad, with the Cardinals, and it's just a part of me. So I miss it, but I also relish the time at home. So everything in life is a balance. Now,
I know it's impossible to ask a favorite game given all that you've called, but is there one that's maybe the most challenging that you've ever had to call?
Yeah, I think, favorite would be probably the 2011 World Series Game 6 when I mimicked my dad's call and said, we'll see you tomorrow night. Yeah. Just because the game was incredible. And the Cardinals were facing elimination. Could have been any team. It just happened to be the Cardinals. But they were facing elimination, and they ended up winning the next night. So it was just an awesome experience to be at the stadium. The Cubs winning was pretty darn cool because there's so much history there. And we were sitting at Wrigley Field in the World Series, and you're like, my God, think about how much time has passed and how many major world events have happened since the last time the World Series was in this stadium, let alone the last time they won it. So all that stuff kind of gets to you. Football-wise, I think every Super Bowl is challenging because there are 100 million people on the other side of this thing that you're talking into. So you have to kind of quell the nerves, and you have to prepare like you have any other game and not put any more importance on it, but that's a hard thing to do when you know that the stakes are as high as they are on a night like that. I would say any Super Bowl is the biggest challenge that I've ever had to face, and at least work-wise, and I'm glad I've gotten through 6 of them. I'm contracted for 1 more. We'll see after that. And, it's a big job. And only a few people have sat in that seat, know what it feels like. And I'm glad I'm one of them.
Well, Joe, before I let you go, do you have any last words of advice for those bright, young, bushy-tailed, aspiring sportscasters like myself on how to start?
I do. I mean, you're doing it. You've obviously got the talent. You've got, the ease on camera. I just think the more you can do this stuff, the more you become comfortable presenting yourself, and the more you listen in an interview, which you do, there's always going to be room for talent. And I think it gets intimidating when when I went to college in Indiana, there was no, there weren't many programs that were lining people up to go into this industry. Now it feels like every school has some sort of radio, TV program and their own studio and all that stuff. But I just say if you've got the will and you're talented, you're going to find your way. And I would say this: be willing to work cheap early and bet on yourself and get hired and say, I don't care if you pay me. After I work here for a year, you're going to want to pay me and you're going to want to keep me around. So it's hard at the beginning, but you'll be rewarded. I mean, I'm saying all this knowing that I got every break imaginable at the beginning of my career, but I also worked hard, and I feel like the harder you work, the more people are going to notice, and you've already got the talent, so you're good. I would bet on you.
I really appreciate that. And more than anything, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down
Sure.
with me this afternoon. I hope you enjoy your time, and congratulations on the induction.
Thank you very much.